And my
Absolutely.
my guest today on the First Time Storytelling broadcast is John Krotec, an Army veteran, entrepreneur, author, podcaster, and speaker. He's focused on helping to educate and improve the human condition through multiple initiatives to include Task Force Zen and Authentic Human Outliers. John is a childhood assault and traumatic brain injury survivor. He is here to share the story of publishing his first book, Fractals, A Poetic Journey for Acceptance, a poetry compilation book for anyone overcoming personal trauma to let them know they're not alone, which became a bestseller. Welcome to the First Time Storytelling broadcast, John.
Well, thanks for having me here, Ann. I'm humbled, and I started listening. You describing me. I'm like, who is that guy? I got to meet that guy. He sounds like somebody that would be really cool. But no, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be on your show, and look forward to telling my story.
All right, well, let's get started. Let's get into it. What first attracted you to poetry? Take us way back to your first poem and falling in love with poetry.
Yeah, we're gonna go. Well, I'm not sure if it was a love affair at first. You mentioned, a childhood assault that took place between the third and fourth grade, and when that kind of thing happens to you, you become fractals. You become pieces. You're not yourself anymore. And so what I did is I didn't even know what the word methodology was, but what I did to handle that was I started writing, creative writing, primarily short stories, stories about heroes and all kinds of things. And then the poetry thing started, and it basically started out as just, my poetry is not really rhyming. And if it does rhyme, it's a complex type of rhyme. And it was just a way for me to try to piece together all of these emotions that I was having a hard time dealing with. And the book really was a long time coming. It took me 47 years to write it,
Oh, wow.
before it finally came out. And we can talk about it, but it started between, right after that, about the fourth grade. And I've got over 5,000 written pieces that I've never displayed really anywhere. And then this book is 125 poems, and it's the first time I've ever published anything. And
Okay.
it's been a lot of fun. So we can talk about it.
So, yeah, obviously, putting this book together, you had to put yourself in a very vulnerable place because you were opening up what happened to you, your world, how you've processed through all of that. To the world. Can you share what was, were you scared to do this book? Were you excited to do this book? What was going on?
Well, thanks for that question. I when something like that happens to you, the thing with assault, sexual assault as a child is that it affects people differently. And it's a mixed bag of exhilaration. You have to be honest and admit it, but you also know that there's something not right with it. And I basically tried to just deal with those emotions, and all through college. And, even with my wife of 30 years, she didn't even know about it until my accident. And then that's when all the demons came out. And it's not uncommon for human beings to be traumatized by something early on. It gets shelved, hidden somewhere. And then a traumatic event like an alcohol-induced traffic accident, which was what happened to me, it was my choice. I do not recommend drinking and driving. And it unleashed the demons. And so I basically became very vulnerable, and I had all these poems, and a good lady friend of mine said, John, you've got all these poems and you want to help people. Why don't you do something with them? And that's what I did. A little over a year ago, I started putting together some of these poems, and then, had it edited, and worked with Kim Richardson Publishing out in Arizona. And the mission is to really reach one person with one poem, and to let people know that they're not alone. Trauma does not have to be sexual assault. It can be, financial ruin. It can be divorce. It can be bullying, disfigurement from an accident, combat.
Losing someone you love, and
then the list of traumas goes on. And everybody, I want people to know, and the reason why I want them to know that they're not alone is because they're not alone. For so long, over four decades, I thought that I was alone. And whenever somebody would look at me, I used to think, what are they thinking about me? And I always went over and beyond the call of duty to try to be accepted. Well, after a while, you're trying. And if you're trying to be accepted by everybody else but yourself, then something's not going to work. And that's what happened to me. It all came to a head. My life spun out of control. The next thing I know, it forced the sale of my business. My wife and I are embroiled in a divorce, and I hit rock bottom. I called a crisis hotline. I am one of those guys. At 55 years old, I called a suicide hotline right around Christmas time. My wife basically said it was over. I hadn't been with my family and alone like that in 27 years. And then, so I reached out for help. I got the help that I needed. And then it was a long and arduous process to get back. I had to learn how to kind of speak again. I had to learn how to, traumatic brain injury does a lot of things. And, I had to work myself back through those stepping stones of agony. And it paid off. 11 months later, with my wife and I separated, she was in Virginia taking care of her mother. I got the card that I never dreamed I would ever get. And it was right before Thanksgiving. And wife basically said, I want you to know, John, that I've called my attorney. The divorce is off, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I've seen a huge change in you, and I want to be with you like that. And so just because we're back together and I saved the marriage doesn't mean that relationships don't take work. They do. And we're still like everybody else. We're all these works in progress. So the book came out just a month ago, and I had a launch team help me, some very close personal friends helped me to push it out there. A really good friend of mine helped me with a press release, and it just blew me away. We had one day we had 1,100 downloads on Amazon. And not only did it reach international bestseller in poetry, but we got 3 other bestseller classifications in other categories. And I'll tell you, Ann, it's tough because, when your self-esteem is down here for so many years, it's tough to even hear you're a best-selling author or you're a poet or, these things that normally you say, hey, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I want to get back and dig a little bit more into your story and everything that you just shared, because I'm sure as people have just listened to it or are listening to it, they can probably relate to some of it, but in those gaps and in those moments, there were a lot that was probably going on with you. So if I have your permission, I'd like to dig a little bit more into that.
Hey, it's your show and I'm here for you. So, I listen, I'm an open book, right?
All right, fabulous. Well, first off, I want to acknowledge the fact that you reached out for help, and that's a huge step when you really do come to realization that you need help, and you go forth and you get that help, because change doesn't happen if you don't take the first step towards that. And I love how you explained, it was a really tough, long journey to get back from where you were, but you put in all of that hard work. But in that process, and I like how you just mentioned, your self-esteem was low, but yet you were willing to take a huge risk in exposing your work of art. And were you, because I think so, a lot of people create amazing things, but they never share it with the world because they're afraid how the world is going to look at their work, the interpretation of their art, or what they created. And they feel like they won't be able to handle the feedback. What was going through your mind as you're pulling your work together? And obviously you have to relive things as you're going back deep into, all the things that you've written. So can you, and at the same time, you're trying to fix your marriage, that's just insane. So can you get us more into what that was like?
Sure. There's a lot there. That's a big question. It seems simple, but it's a big question. Everybody suffers from self-doubt, every single one of us. So, and I was able to hide it throughout most of my life because I showed confidence, and confidence really was just a mask for this 3rd grader who had been wounded so deeply and emotionally. And all through college, I hid, myself in a fraternity, and a lot of drinking and a lot of good times, and but always breaking a heart here or there and feeling worse and worse and worse about it. And so I think that it really struck me my first day of one-on-one therapy in cognitive behavioral therapy. I had a fantastic therapist. There's nothing wrong with seeking therapy, because a lot of times they can guide you through these things. And she said point blank, we may not be able to save your marriage, but we can save you. You're going to have to let your wife go. And that was one of the toughest things that I've ever had to do, but my therapist was right. About 3 months into it, she's giving me this look on her face and she's smiling at me and she's like, John, you know what? You make me happy. I've been doing this for 30 years and you're one of those people, clients, patients that actually does the work. And you mentioned it, and life is not always a bowl of cherries. You're going to have some pits every now and then. And that's just the way that it is. If you distract yourself with behaviors and negative thinking to mask the pain of life, then you're only going to run into a roadblock down the road. You keep putting it off, you keep putting it off. And what I finally had to realize is I had to be integral. I'd always been integral with just about everybody else but myself. So I'm lying to myself, but I'm being honest with other. It doesn't make sense. So I had to be brutally honest with myself and realize that, all the high risk behavior, I rode motorcycles, I climbed mountains, I did things always pushing the envelope because I didn't care. And a good buddy of mine once told me that mountaineering was like whoever suffers the best. You can't breathe, you got nosebleeds, you got headaches, your appetite's gone, and you've been up for days and days and days to climb to the summit. Well, life is like that. Life is whoever suffers the best. We cannot escape pain as a human being. And so those emotional injuries that happen to each and every one of us, I think it's guesstimated that over 7.5 billion people on the planet, which is just about everybody, has been traumatized at least one time. So think about that. We're not alone on this orb floating throughout the universe. Everybody's got a story to tell. And thankfully, people like you, Ann, you're brave to have a story to let people share their stories. So you're part of this network too, to create things that are real and authentic and vulnerable. And, you just have to be honest. And yeah, when I decided I was going to write a book and I was going through the editing process, I was like, gosh, do I really want to put this poem out there? I'll read one of these, but you have to, because the only way you're ever going to come to some type of agreement with yourself is to realize that you got to be real. Yeah. And if you're going to be phony, then you're just going to keep wallowing in the mire. We've heard all these things, and, all of these idioms that we grew up with started to make sense. And I'm just, at this stage of the game, I just turned 60. I don't feel 60, but I realize now that there's so much more important things in life than to keep lying to myself and living with the dark, dirty secret. Get it out there. And when I was on, it's funny because when I came out, we can smoke and joke about this, but when I came out, I got to tell you, Ann, you would not believe how many women and men in private messaging said, hey, John, thanks for sharing your story. Oh, and by the way, when I was 8 years old at Uncle Bob's house, this happened. Or when I was 14 years old at Granddad's house, this happened. And it totally blew me away how many children suffered and went through something very similar to me. It broke my heart. And so most men don't talk about things like that. So I guess maybe I'm an aberration. Some do, but most don't. And the only way I was ever going to be able to heal myself and recover and be whole again was to tell my story. And it's been transcendent. I'm still a work in progress. I don't think a traumatic brain injury ever goes away. It doesn't get better. It just gets different.
Yeah. I like how you said that. It doesn't get better, it just gets different. And you still find yourself in that. You still find the joys of living, you still find the opportunities, it's just because things are not perfect or ideal, it doesn't end things. Like I know for me, that took me a really long time to realize that and to accept that. And some of it is accepting where we are in life, yet knowing that we can make the best of it. And it's entirely up to us to continue to change the situation. And the best way you change a situation is you have to change yourself, because you can change your environment all day long and you are going to continue to be in it. And eventually you return right back to where you were. So let's get to more of I guess, the working details of this. How did you find your publisher? So did someone come along and say, we would like to publish your work? So then you said, okay, I'm going to do this book. Did you decide I'm going to do this book? And then you went out and try to find a publisher.
Well, thanks for the question. And by the way, everybody makes mistakes. So the biggest thing that I want people to realize, when you make a mistake in your life, we all make mistakes. Get over it. Don't beat yourself up. Forgive yourself and move on. I think that was the biggest thing I had to get through. But back to the question, I've been working with the publicist with my other companies for a while now, and she kind of knows a little bit about the story. And she's a writer herself, and she had written in a book that Kim Richardson of Kim Richardson Publishing had published. And I said, well, that's pretty cool. And she does things right along those lines: healing and recovery, holistic, spiritual. And so I just called, left a message. Kim got in contact with me, and she kind of told me about the process, told me what the different options were. It wasn't nearly as expensive as I thought it was going to be. And then she took me through the editing process. Great editor up in Maine, and Carrie up there. And then we just went through the process, and I just followed her rules. I followed the methodologies that she had done time and time again. And we created a Facebook page. We created a Kindle account on Amazon. She designed the cover, which I think is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Me in the third grade and me in the fourth grade, what a difference, from a kid full of life to a kid that's just a zombie. And she designed the cover. They did all the editing. I mean, it was an all-female operation. I loved it. Everything was right on time. We hit all the benchmarks, all the schedules. And it was, to tell you the truth, it was seamless. And then to take the cake, we mentioned the best-selling. I had no idea that would ever happen. And a lot of it has to do with the team behind you. I had, like I said, mentioned earlier, I had that friend write me a press release. We released it the same week of the 5-day promotion of the book. I had 92 people, close personal friends, a lot of veterans on a launch team with me that helped me to circulate information about the book. A lot of people bought the book, and the reviews were just phenomenal. I also learned that a lot of people on my team also had similar stories of sexual assault as a child, both men and women on that team. And it just was, it was just phenomenal. And, now I'm thinking about what's the next step. But the next step is to promote the book. And you're giving me a great opportunity here, but also to think about the next one and put more poetry out there. But I got to say, for the first time, with the exception of the self-doubt every now and then, wondering if I want to share that particular poem, it was seamless. Another thing too about poetry books, if you go, it's not the biggest section in most of your bookstores, but the poetry books that are in there, pick one up and look at them. One of the things that I did was I have a table of contents. Not many poetry books do that. And then I have like 1 or 2 or 3 sentences at the end of each poem to kind of describe what's going on and what my thought process was. How often have you read a poem and it doesn't make sense, or you really don't know where they're coming from? And this kind of just helps the reader to understand where that particular poem came from in my soul. So, but it's been a lot of fun, and all I can say is that for the first time, it was awesome.
That's great. What a difference being surrounded by the right people makes. I mean, that is such a blessing in of itself, to have the right people in your life at the right time to guide you in the right direction.
Yes. And how many times in your life have you not had the right people around? I mean, if there was something in the dictionary that said not the right people, my picture would be in there, you know? So you're so right, Ann. That's a great point. And, you know, people remember the movie Soylent Green? This might date me a little bit. Charlton Heston.
No.
Well, there's a catchphrase in the movie Soylent Green is people. I'm not going to give away it's a science fiction from the 70s, but life is people.
Yeah.
And in order to get along in life, we have to get along with people.
It's probably one of the things that I've prayed for the most is to have the right people come into my life, because I realize that that is the biggest difference maker, is the people that come into your life. Now, what did it feel like when you first held your print copy of it? What was that like?
Gosh, that's a good question. It was, you know, it was surreal, you know, to see, you know, to actually, you know, hold the book. Of course, but to actually hold the book and, you know, your pictures on the back, but to look at myself with pictures that I never shared. And there's a reason that I never shared these pictures, you know. I remember that kid in both pictures, and he just wanted to be John, and he was uncertain what had happened to him, and wasn't sure if he could ever trust the world again, or if people were going to ever accept him because of that dark thing that happened basically all of about 90 seconds. And I've thought often about, not too often, but I've thought often sometimes about the guy that did that. And I wonder what kind of pain he must have been in to want to do that to another human being like that. And I thank God that I never had that that type of desire to do that to anybody. And, you know, a lot of times we call these ancestral traumas that they
Yeah, they
repeat
pass on.
themselves. And until somebody like me or another brave person puts an end to it and says the madness is going to stop with me. So I imagine that particular act of, I imagine it probably in my lineage probably has gone on for centuries. And I'm the guy that finally in my chain of command, I guess, I decided I'm going to put a stop to it. And I exhibited all the symptoms of childhood assault, you know, so if you're a parent and you're listening, keep an eye on your kids. You would be blown away by the people that do things like this. And the show is not meant to scare people. We're educating people. But I never told anybody, you know, who am I going to tell? And the social stigma of something like that kept my mouth shut for 42 years. So keep an eye on your kids, and you know, bad things happen, you know, and I just wanted to put an end to it.
Oh, wow. Super that you have and that you've shared your story. And now you said you wanted to read one. I'd say I'm going to brace myself. I had this is a month of poetry for me. I had a young lady, and last week what she shared is the first time sharing the spoken word. So she entered a poetry competition, and when she read her poem, she had me in tears. So I'm going to brace myself. I've already cried once.
You know, I flipped through.
I'm ready.
There's lots of. I'm not going to make you cry, but there's. You know, I flipped through a few here. I'm not going to, but like the Song of Conquest. This is not going to make you cry, but it's called the Song of Conquest, and it really is about war and the celebration of war.
Okay.
We will gulp wine from the skull caps of the enemy, wear their ears around our necks for our jewelry. From their rib bones we will craft lyres, use their dried sinews for strings. We will play a lovely tune for our benefit, not theirs. Soon we'll clap our hands, move slowly in a circle around the fire. Together we will dance, one of victory. It's called Song of Conquest. And it really is about these traditions of war, how war gets glorified. And when we glorify war, and I'm an Army veteran, how we forget about the enemy. And when you think we're reveling in the death of an enemy, it just makes you wonder.
Yeah.
That's something we should really be doing. You know, shouldn't we be giving reverence to the people we killed? Just
Yeah,
saying.
because as you were reading it, like one of the reaction I had to it, it was like a violent disagreement because of that. Like I'm glad you explained it, because it's like you should always respect your enemy and understand that, you know, they're fighting for what they believe in. It might not
Yeah.
align with what you are, but you know, there's a same drive, there's the same compassion, there's the same obsession and why they're fighting.
We should not
And
be celebrating the death of it.
no, we shouldn't, you know, and because it impacts you in the process of that. But I think it is a way that people do that in order to deal with what they've done. So if we minimize the enemy, then it makes us feel better about what we have to do. And, you know, we could talk about that, I'm sure,
So
for a
that's a
very
big,
long time.
and that's a big, no, and that's a big subject, you know. I'll read another one. And this is about, you know, the kiss and how we can't judge books by their covers. But the kiss is a pretty good indicator of somebody's soul and their heart. It's called Kissing the Devil Inside of Her. She's dark, yet moonlight glows inside her soft eyes. And despite her tragic aura, I still want her dark side, to taste her magic, to kiss the devil inside her. Yeah, that one
That's
is about,
beautiful.
you know, so people might appear dark on the outside and we really don't know, you know, but when you kiss them, it can reveal a whole lot.
Yeah.
And even as dark as somebody might seem, they still have a heart and they still have a soul. And one way that humans can express that is through something as simple as a kiss, you know. So
But it also, again, as you were reading it, my reaction to it was, you know, wanting something that you know isn't good for you, right?
that too, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
there's always, that's the thing about poetry, is there's always a way to interpret that. And if it strikes a chord, then the poet or the writer has done something. And
yeah. So
that's the
I
cool
find
thing.
it,
Yeah.
sorry, I find it interesting that poetry is coming into my life, and I'm like, huh, is this a hint? Do I
You got to
need,
write. You got to,
do
do
I
you
need,
write?
uh, I do. I've written a few poets actually, but it's always been like what it really drove me to want to do it. But I think it's the exposure, perhaps reading it more, is what this is about, because I am enjoying it. One of the things that has, like in school, because I have a psychology degree, but I thought about getting an English literature degree. But the reason why I didn't is because how much people dig into other people's work. And it's like, maybe they just wrote it to write it. Like, why do we have to drive ourselves crazy to see significance in it? But I think I'm slowly growing up to the concept of, okay, even if they didn't imply meaning, there's meaning to be gained from it. So I think it's my evolution as I'm being
No,
exposed to
no,
poetry.
but you're raising a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because so often we take things personal. And many times, like you said earlier in the show, that people don't do certain things because they're worried about how other people are going to think about them. And the same thing with what happened to me as a young boy. I can remember my brother in college. We were roommates in college going back 30 something years ago. And, you know, he said one time, I just got off the phone. I was all upset about something. And he goes, you know, if you quit worrying about what people think about you, you're going to be awesome. This is my baby brother telling me this, but I never listened to him. You know, I was always more concerned about what people felt. So one of the things I had to do in my recovery and healing was to get over what other people think about me. And I think, you know, everybody's on this different trajectory, right? So, you know, some people find out sooner in life than others, you know, that, you know, I'm not going to say you have to be a complete idiot and treat everybody mean, but you know what? I can't help it if somebody doesn't want me or like me. And so I always say, well, it's super cool if you like me, and it's cool too if you don't like me.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm grateful. So that took me a long time. Don't, you know, anybody listening or watching the show, none of these things came to me overnight. You know, I'm a little bit stubborn at times, as most people are. And a lot of these tough lessons I had to learn with a lot of tears. I have a little, fire circle in the back of my house. And when my wife and I were separated, I spent many, many, many hours out there at 1, 2, 4 o'clock in the morning, crying my eyes out, asking the universe and God for some type of direction. I need your help. Can you help me, please? And sometimes you have to ask for help.
Oh, I think you always like you always have to ask for help. I mean, that's I can say one of my major life lesson has been to open up my mouth and ask for help. And it's scary to do that because the help might not come, or it might not be what you expect. Or, I mean, if you don't open your mouth, then you're fine because you're not making yourself vulnerable to somebody rejecting you or to the help not showing up. But once you do and you put yourself out there, it becomes a lot scarier. And that's something that took me a long time to do. And now I do it constantly. And a lot of times there is no help that comes. And I can be as okay with the help that comes and the help that doesn't come, because I know, I mean, it's faith-based though. I mean, ultimately, I know that God's got my back. Like, just because he's not answering right away, I know he will in time, and it's all going to make sense. But I do believe if you don't have that, then quite honestly, I can see where life is challenging, and you can feel very alone and lonely because of that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I agree with you wholeheartedly. And um, I think that, without a spiritual base or some type of reverence for something sacred, I can't imagine all we do is we live and we breathe, we go to work, we pay our bills, we pay our taxes, and then we retire and then we die and that's it. I don't believe that. And I just know that, today's day and age, and, I know it's not a show about religion, but today's day and age, we've lost a certain amount of sacredness in our lives. And the sacredness can be whatever you want it to be. It's just a reverence for something bigger than you as a person. And I like what you said that, you always know that God's got your back, because I agree with that. The only reason I'm even here, we didn't even dig into some of the stuff that I've done in my life, but the only reason I'm even here is because there was something greater than me making sure I was going to survive, and because there's a bigger plan or something. But I, for all intents and purposes, with some of the mountain climbing stuff that I've done and some of the other, high risk things, I probably shouldn't be here, but I am. And now that I am here, I'm going to make sure that the rest of my life, I can make a difference in not only in my marriage, but in other people's lives. Yeah.
Oh, well, I love it. And I can definitely see that you're doing that with your book, with your poetry, with all the different initiatives that you have going on. So thank you for being who you are and doing what you do. So are you ready to move on to the first time lightning round?
Sure.
Well, lighten up the mood a little bit. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been a great talk, but
It's deep. We're deep
it's
here.
deep,
So.
and I love that. I mean, this is why I do that, and I love the guests that are willing to get deep, are willing to get vulnerable, or willing to put it out there, and all those guests have something in common. They've been on an incredible journey. They found themselves, they faced themselves, and they're living life to the max. So I love that. All right, so the way the first time lightning round works is similar to the app. So I'm going to throw some first time potentials out there for you. If it's something you've done before, it's up. If it's something you've never done, not interested, left. And if it's something that you've never done, would like to do, then it's right.
Okay. So I'm going like this or that.
Yeah, you could just verbally say it.
Okay.
I'm a hand speaker.
Okay, left means I'm not interested, right means I'm interested, and up means I've done it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So throw water balloons.
I've done it.
All right. Do you remember your first time? Do you remember your first water balloon fight?
I would have to say it was probably in my neighborhood, in my backyard with my sisters. We were always doing crazy stuff like that. And they actually hurt because what would happen is they'd break and then you'd snap somebody with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've thrown them. I don't think I've ever been hit by them, but I could see where
Oh,
that would hurt. Yeah.
I've been, yeah.
Okay. Play the lottery.
Yes.
Ever won
I've never
anything? Never
won.
won.
I played the lottery like 4 times and I'm done with the lottery.
All right.
I don't know if it's in the stars for me. I'm going to probably have to earn it the hard way. So
Very well. All right. Make and throw pizza dough. So actually like do the throwing pizza dough.
I have, I was, my first job was in a restaurant when I was 15 years old, an Italian restaurant called Bruno's. And I was a pizza maker. They taught me how to make pizzas and we used to make dough and I can spin a pizza, so yeah.
Was it tough learning how to do it? Like, did you have a few flops?
No, I did. Sometimes it hit the ground, but the thing about the dough is when you spin it, that the weight of it goes to the outside. And if you're not careful, your hand will go right through the middle of it. So you got to kind of do it. There's a technique to it. Yeah. That brings back memories.
That's why I love the first time lightning round. All right. Participate in a mob dance.
I've never done that. I don't have a desire to do that. I probably would hurt somebody because I can't dance, and maybe it's the best dance for me. I don't know, but I don't want to hurt anybody.
All right.
Maybe if I was talked into it, I would, but not right now.
So we're gonna go right. We're gonna go right on it. I think if you had the right people, you would do it.
Yeah.
All right. Do airplane or car models? Do you know what I'm like?
Oh yeah,
I've made them.
I used to build models. That was one of my dad's biggest bonding thing with me as a kid. He would build some models, and as I got older, I would start to build models, and I loved cars. And I used to really get into the detail of them. And I also did a lot of World War II models, tanks and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, very neat. Awesome. Okay. Take an advanced driving course.
Well, I'm a motorcycle license guy, so that was kind of an advanced driving course. Is driving a motorcycle. That's riding a motorcycle. I would do that. Absolutely. I like high speeds.
Yeah, like evasive and yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be fun.
Okay, so that's a right. Okay, attend a film festival.
I've been to several film festivals. Love them. There's a lot of energy there. So many creative people. I haven't been to the big one in Cannes yet, but we were in Calgary and a few of them like that. But I love them. And also right here in Sarasota, where I'm from in Florida, the Sarasota Film Festival is huge, and love them. Yes, that's an up.
Awesome. Okay, attend a pet obedience class or training with a pet.
Have done that. I'm a Jack Russell Terrier lover. My wife and I have owned 4 of them. We just recently got one in Virginia not long ago. I highly recommend obedience classes for any dog owners because they work. And sometimes dogs, especially Jack Russell Terriers, they need to be controlled.
Yeah. What was your first class like? Like, was it what you expected?
A lot of trepidation because my dogs are small and there's a lot of big dogs in there, and you don't know really what a big dog might do to a small dog. And dogs, they have their own pecking order. The what do they call it? The herd? No, is it the herd?
I'm not sure, but
the troop or what?
Yeah.
Dog. Yeah. So you just don't know what's going to happen. And one of the class we went to, oh my gosh, my dog used to get pummeled by the big dogs, and it used to scare me.
Oh no. Yeah. Okay. Take a polar bear plunge.
I haven't been to the Arctic to do it, but we used to mountain climb. I did it for 15 years, and I have been in glacial water that is extremely cold. I've also stood in a waterfall that was extremely cold, glacial runoff, and we were always looking for a rock to come over the side. But I've done it. Yeah. Okay. It really wakes you up.
I have not done it. It's on my list, but I can only imagine. I hate the cold, so be one of those. Just suck it up and do it.
Yeah, it's cold. It's cold.
Yeah. Hire a financial planner.
I have done that. There's different financial planners. I'm not great at finance. My wife is my financial planner, and she uses one, and I think they're awesome. They've helped us a great deal.
Excellent. Okay, so the next question is today's first time story prompt. And the prompt is your first love.
Yeah, I remember her. Yeah, I was mesmerized by her. And she, nothing, we didn't go all the way, but I was young. I was 16 and she was 16, and those moments. Yeah, I
Is it
remember.
love at first sight or?
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
that. And I don't know, I guess we were both too outcast, but we found some solace in each other, and but it was a lot of fun.
Um,
Those, yeah.
yeah. My first love, he was a senior and I was a freshman, and they had this thing the first couple of weeks of school where a senior walked down the freshman down the line of teachers. I think that's a really good concept, actually. I don't know if they still do it, but it was a great way for freshmen and seniors to get to know each other, get introduced to all the teachers, and then there would be a school dance where everybody's there. So great way for the freshmen to get, feel included into the school. And so I'm at cross country practice, and a couple girls came up and they're so excited, and like, "Oh my God, Anne, such and such wants to walk you down the freshman line." And I'm
Awesome.
like, who is this person? I'm like, I don't know who this is. So the following day, they introduced me to him at lunch, and he was the captain of the football team, very good looking guy. And, I was a little nervous, but I met him and I didn't think anything of it. The day of the event, he walked me down. And then later that night, he asked me to dance. And definitely when I danced with him, my heart, like, it skipped a little bit. And it took a little while. The rest of the year we would see each other. He would say hello, but he had a girlfriend. There was nothing there. But I was definitely starting to notice him more and more. And then we found ourselves at a party and we talked some more. And then he told me he was joining the Marine Corps. So he's the one who introduced me to my major love that's been part of my life for 24 years. And
Awesome.
so we wrote each other while he was at boot camp, and his first year in the Marine Corps. And it's kind of like how the love grew. And when he come back home, we'd see each other. And yeah, that was my first love.
Isn't it
um,
a nice feeling?
yeah, it is. And you've been married for 30 plus years, so I've pretty much spent the rest of my life mostly single. So for me, it's great to look back on that, because it really, having had where that was a part of my life, and having to have had that, it was great. So
When I was going through the recovery, I remember my therapist said, John, love always wins. And it's true. I think
yeah.
love always wins. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, thank you for sharing yours. So the last question is how's the current situation with the pandemic? Like, how are you making the best of what's happening?
It's been great. I've been able to walk more, spend more quality time with my wife. We picked some things up around the yard, and I've managed, my job is all digital anyway. So I've written more blogs. I've written a lot more poetry, meditation, yoga. I've worked out, started working out again, that I had been neglecting for a while. I used to keep myself in fairly decent shape, and I'm getting back in shape. And it's been okay. I initially had, probably like everybody else, was on social media and television, glued to the television set to try to figure out what's going on. And what we started to realize is that it just agitates. I don't know how long we can go with closing all the businesses, of the planet, but I think it's going to start opening back up. I think we've learned a lot. I think we've learned what's really important. And
Yeah.
I feel sorry for the businesses that are not going to be able to recover, and really feel sorry for anybody that's lost a loved one, because that's not any way to go. And then imagine the businesses that are still going to suffer, because now I talked to a lady the other day. She says, we used to go to the coffee shop. She's from New York, Brooklyn. And she said, I'd spend $12 a morning, with the coffee shop. She said, I'm not going to go anymore. She said, I'm just going to have coffee at the house and not fight the crowd. So there's going to be something to think about. There's going to be businesses that still suffer, because now we may make a determination or a choice not to spend the money like we used to. And that's a shame.
Yeah, I think we are absolutely. There's a post I want to write today, and just say that in your reality is change and adaptability. Things are going to continue to shift and move and change, and same for you. Like, my heart goes out to everyone who's lost someone, because that is the worst way to go, because everybody had to go.
Horrible.
They were alone, they were by themselves, and you didn't get to mourn. You didn't I mean, that's going to have effects for a really long time, because it is important to get to mourn, to see the others, and to do that together. So I hope they're, and that it's going to constantly be delayed to be able to do that. I think that is the absolute worst part of this entire crisis, is that aspect of it. But
Yeah.
on the flip side, for everything else, it's about adaptability. It's about being to pivot, be able to change. If you're in business, that's constantly your reality of something like that could happen, of that size. Nobody could have predicted it, but it did. So now, who are you in that moment, in that situation? And how do you thrive? How do you raise out of the ashes? So I think it's definitely going to be
Different.
yeah, and it's never going back. It's never going back to another normal, because everything is going to expedite the application of machine learning, of robots, of, like, everything's just going to be on a different cycle now. And that's why, like, certainty will not exist, I don't think, as a whole, for a long time. It's going to be the certainty that you can create for yourself, which means how capable are you to adapt to change.
Yeah, great points, and everybody remembers 9/11 and how America pulled together. And I get there's a little bit of a different feeling with this one. It feels like we've become more polarized, and I just pray that we can get over that, these differences of opinion. And I always have a quote, polarization only works in sunglasses, not in sustainable communities. And so it's important that we start at home, that we're together at home, and then our local community, and then the state, and then the nation. But it's important that let's set aside our differences and look at ways that we can find solutions, because who wants to be fighting all
Yeah, I
the time? I
agree.
don't. I don't.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with what you said. Like, you guys were initially glued to the TV, and then you walked away from it. It's like, I need the key factual information to base what I need to do off of. And then everything else is just noise. And I don't care about people's opinions, because that's all it is. It's opinions, because it's unprecedented times. So everybody, it's a massive guess
That's true.
of
No, that's true.
what's going to happen. So, from base case to worst case scenario. And that's why, how you can prepare yourself and your mindset. That's, to me, like, that's the key, is who you are through this. And it's part of why I do this, because hearing first time story, like hearing your story, and how you did rise out of the ashes, but you were burning for quite a while. But
A long time. Yeah.
get get to see you, and you can relive those moments. You understand your past, you understand who you are. Like, hearing those stories, and to understand that if you're burning right now, you will get on the other side. There's a lot of people that get to the other side. Listen to the stories of the people that got to the other side, and take solace in their stories.
No, you're absolutely correct. And I'm really proud of you too, to take the initiative to do something like this. This is a really cool idea. And
Oh,
because even at this stage of the game, you know, where I'm at right now, there's still first time things for everything. It's not like life is over once you get the prize, whatever that is. But yeah, I mean, there's you just got to grab it with both horns, or by the horns, and you just got to ride. Because if you don't, what was somebody told me one time? There's three ways to play life. It's like a poker game. Take the hand that you're dealt and deal with it. That can be agony. Or you can fold them. We know where that goes. Or we can ask for more cards. And I'm just asking for more cards all the time. I
oh.
want more and more. And there's a limit, but I just don't think that. I think there's a lot more out there still.
That is a great way to end the show. There's absolutely so much more out there. Life has so much to give you. All you have to do is be curious and go find it. So ask for more cards. Love it, John. That's
Yeah, thank you.
awesome.
And I appreciate you, and stay safe, be healthy.
Thank you. Same to you and your wife.